I'm so excited to present granola today, as you can see with my new microphone, so hopefully you can hear me better. I like to use granola for just because it's so delicious, but it comes in especially handy when I am traveling because there's no guarantee that I'll be able to get a breakfast that I can eat. And when I know I will have obligations that'll make it so I have a hard time cooking. For example, when we had our first baby, I knew I wasn't going to be able to be making breakfasts, so I made a few gallons of granola beforehand to help tide us through the first few months. One example where I used it when I was traveling was when my husband and I first met. We were long distance, so I would fly to see him and he would fly to see me. And I remember on one of the first times I brought some granola as kind of like a hospitality gift. And I left it there, and the next day he was like, "Wow, that was so good. Can you make some more?" All right, well, let's jump in. I tend to make this in super large batches. So we're gonna start with 10 cups of oats. 1, 2, 3, 10. And we'll want 2 cups of coconut and 2 cups of brown sugar. This is shredded unsweetened coconut, and I get this from Azure Standard. It will not be the same if you use sweetened coconut or the larger shred. You want the very finely shredded coconut. Two cups of brown sugar. I just make them mounded, but you can pack it to make it exact. But this recipe is not exact. You can have quite a variation with the amounts of ingredients you use. Now we want our nuts, 2 cups of pecans, and 2 cups of walnuts. All right, now we're gonna mix together our liquids and our salt. We'll be using 2 tablespoons of Mexican vanilla. If you don't have a real vanilla, you may need twice as much. And we want 1/2 to 1 tablespoon of salt. I'm going to be using 2 teaspoons. And I forgot to mention, I'm adding this into 1.5 cups of water. And we're gonna need 2 cups of oil. But I'm gonna go ahead and stir everything before I add the oil. I'm gonna be using 1 strong spoon to stir this granola here. All right, that's pretty well combined. And I'm going to stir my liquids. This particularly gets the salt to be spread out and not in all in one clump of granola. That's probably the most important part of stirring. So I'm just checking to see if it looks like the salt is dissolved when I'm looking in the spoon here. And you can see that it's pretty much dissolved now. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour it in. Give this a quick stir. And then I'm going to add the oil. I want 2 cups of oil. I'm going to be using extra virgin olive oil. Although it works with other oils, I've used canola as well. I know this is a lot of oil, but it's a big recipe. This is what makes it crispy and crunchy when it's baked instead of soggy or hard. All right, time to bake. Go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. and dish the granola onto a couple of cookie sheets. It's really important to get an even layer of granola on the cookie sheet, otherwise it won't bake evenly. Also, don't make it too thick or too thin. I like to make it just close enough to where you can't see the cookie sheet, but thin enough that it's just about to see the cookie sheet. So you can see it's about the depth of a pecan or a walnut, and this will be consistent with the amount of times that I'm going to give you to bake it at. If you do it thinner or thicker, you may have to adjust the baking time. This will give you several sheets of granola, and the cooking times are for 2 sheets in the oven at the same time. If you have only 1 sheet, or you have the sheet partially filled, the timing will be less. All right, this sheet looks pretty good to go. I'm not seeing much of the cookie sheet anymore. All right, the oven is preheated. Let's pop it in. One important thing is to make sure the racks are at the right level. You want them evenly spaced apart. Not at the top, not at the bottom. I have mine on the one just down from the top and the one just up from the bottom. Let's go ahead and set the timer for 20 minutes. All right, it looks like our timer is going off. We'll go ahead and get the granola out of the oven. Wow, it is looking beautiful. Now we just need to give it a stir. And return it to the oven for another 15 minutes. All your trays will need at least 20 minutes and then a stir, and then 15 minutes and then another stir. Some of them will need another 5 to 15, sometimes even 30 minutes, depending upon how thick they are and how many trays you have in the oven and how much you have on each tray. So just do a quick cool it down and taste test to see if it's crunchy to your liking. Enjoy!